sometimes you can be so seared and jaded that you really are unable to love because you've been burned so many times in the past, or just because you shut yourself off, which is what usually is the case. People will get hurt, and then they'll just kind of like fold their arms and say, well, I'm never going to allow that to happen to me again. And then they shut themselves off. And then, of course, none of us sees the world the way it is. We see the world the way that we are. And so you start seeing that, love isn't real and nobody's really compassionate. Everyone's just out for themselves because that's what you're looking for. That's what you expect to find. So you'll find those examples, or worse yet, you'll superimpose those motivations on people, even when they're not there. This person's trying to show you that they love you, that they care. They're just trying to kiss my ass. This person admires you. No, they're just trying to kiss my ass. That's all. They want something out of me. It's not the case, man, all the time. Are there people out there like that? Yes, but that's not the world. And if it is your world, I would suggest to you, you need to find a new group of people, because that's not the world. There are all kinds of people out there, and there are snakes in the garden, of course, but there's also angels in there once in a while. Kind of a stupid question to ask, but I'm not sure how else to ask it except stupidly. What are the downsides of that, of like opening yourself up to somebody? No? Yeah. Yeah, you open yourself up to people or to somebody or to the wrong person, and then they can use it against you. And they may not be the wrong person today, but they could be the wrong person a year from now, 2 years from now, because people change. The dynamics of relationships change. I'm sure some of you have been the victim of that. Or worse yet, having things said about you that aren't true, and having to kind of fight those off from people who used to be close to you. And sometimes they'll be like, I don't know, this person was pretty close with you, so they seem to know some things about you, so what they're saying is probably true, even though it's not. It's so far from truth. Yeah, so there are lots of reasons that a person can be unable to love. It could be out of, I hate using the word fear, I guess I'll use the word precaution of having those things used against you later. Or even just some of you, I'm sure, I can imagine, just don't like to be known by a lot of people. You're just a very private person, and people will, and you'll know that people who are not private people will take that in a very negative way, and they'll kind of be like, well, I don't know, this person seems awfully secretive. You're not secretive, you're just private. And really, how often do people ask you a lot of questions about yourself, especially if you're that private person? They ask you not just like how you're doing, but ask you what your motivations are. It's like, I don't know, why don't you post these things online? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Or worse yet, you get those responses, well, I don't know, if you're, an innocent person doesn't behave like this. How does an innocent person behave? Really interestingly, how does an innocent person behave? There's this neat channel on YouTube. Well, it's not around anymore, but you can still find some of their videos there. It's called JCS Psychology. Jim Can't Swim. I have no idea why it's called Jim Can't Swim, but it's JCS Psychology. And it's long form videos where they show interrogations, police interrogations. And they have a team of psychologists who work for the channel who they'll show the interview, the interrogation, and then they'll pause it once in a while to explain to you what's going on. They'll explain to you some of the body language of the person being interrogated. Now, it's important to note, and they will point out, that body language is really not it's not a precise science. When people say things like, well, body language, when a person lies, their eyes go a certain way, they go in a certain direction. That's not necessarily true. It's sometimes true, it's mostly true, but even in the sense of like a person who's lying to you won't look at you, they won't look you in the eye. That's not true. Psychopaths will be very good at looking you in the eye. And if you have this preconception that an innocent person doesn't look away, a person who feels embarrassed or ashamed, they have a tendency to not look at people because they just feel so bad about what they're being accused of. Anybody here heard of Trevor Bauer by any chance? He was thank you. He was a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he was accused 3 years ago, I think it was, essentially, of domestic violence and sexual assault. And in long story short, he pitched for the Dodgers. The Dodgers canceled his contract, and Major League Baseball suspended him for years. And he hasn't been back since. In the last 6 months or so, the court proceedings and everything kind of played out. Everything was dropped, and he was under a gag order, so he wasn't allowed to do it. But now he's able to do it. He released the text messages that the person who accused him of it took video of herself at his house that day of it. Her friends essentially shared text messages where she admitted, I made it up, I'm trying to get money out of him. It completely destroyed his career. But the thing about it is that when she did that, other people came out and said, it happened to me too. And the funny thing is that the first case did it to Tatis as well. You guys know that he plays for the Padres. His thing though is he just paid the money and was like, he just like, I don't want any part of this. He just paid the money so that even though it wasn't true, he didn't want anything like that to damage his reputation. The difference between Tatis and Bauer is that Bauer said, I'm not paying you. Screw that. He's worth $51 million. He could have paid her. And he just said, no, it's the principal. I'm not going to pay that. So he didn't. And then it turns out that, like I said, when the girl made those accusations, a few people then came out and made accusations. And one by one of them actually was just charged with perjury because, again, text messages and things proved that she was lying too, and that she jumped on it because somebody else had accused. So this was a guy who's now lost. He's playing baseball in Mexico now, but he lost his. It was like a $71 million contract or something like that he had to forfeit because of all this that was going on. And you had all of this stuff going on, like, I don't know, man, an innocent person doesn't behave like he behaves. An innocent person doesn't do this, an innocent person doesn't do that. Look at his body language. And I saw these videos about it, and they were all completely and 100% wrong. And so sometimes we can put so much into how a person is supposed to be or how they're supposed to respond. A person who's honest behaves like this. Who knows? People behave differently for different reasons. If you're under different pressures, if you have different things going on in your head. That's one of those hard things about how is it that you comfort a person. We just named 5 different ways that you might think to comfort a person. And the truth is that how an innocent person behaves, we oftentimes superimpose, well, if it was me, here's what I would do. You have no idea what you would do under those conditions because you're going to respond to things differently. If you're going, you might know how you like to be comforted. Maybe the way that you like to be comforted is for people to not call you out and to just pretend like everything is fine or that everything is normal, and you just don't want to have a scene made out of it. Or maybe you're that person who does like to have to be pulled aside, and you want people to acknowledge it and to make you feel like, okay, so I'm known and I'm acknowledged. But unless you know the person really, really well, you can't know how best to comfort a person. And of course, that extends also to how do you love a person? I'm sure you've heard of the love languages before. And there's different ways that people show love, and there are different ways that people like to be shown that they're loved. And if you're with a person, even if you're just in a relationship with a person, not necessarily romantic, but it could be romantic, it could be family, it could be friends, it could be whatever. And if you have dramatically different ways of showing affection, I have a friend who was with somebody, and his way of showing affection was to buy her stuff. And she's extremely thrifty. She's very, she watches her money very, very closely. So her thing was, he would buy her a Gucci purse, and just to show her something, and she'd be like, how much was? All that she can see in her head is this is $1,000 purse. That's too much, and not in the sense of she felt bad because an expensive thing was given to her, but she felt bad in the sense of it's a waste of money because a $30 purse will work just as well as this $1,000 purse. In her mind, that money could have been saved and it could have been used for other things. And his thing was, God, you don't even appreciate it when I do these nice things for you. In her mind, it's not a nice thing. Now, if she got him something, and she were to say to him, hey, I got you this, I don't know, let's say she got him a pair of AirPods or whatever, and they were 30% off. For her, that'd be I got these for you, and they were 30% off. She'd be proud to say, I saved some money on this. And his mind is like, well, it's not, well, why is it about the money? See, two very different personalities. And so you have to, you might say like, well, those two people just can't work. Maybe, or maybe they just have to step outside of themselves a little bit and say, okay, this is how you like to be shown affection. This is how you like to be reached out to if you're suffering. This is how you like to, this is how you'll behave when you, whatever. But you have to be open to how other people are. It's when we insist that everybody else is going to be like us, that they're going to respond the same way, that they're going to feel the same way, that they're going to answer the same way, that we start getting tripped up, because at that point we're not communicating. And so sometimes you just can't, you're just unable to love in the sense of showing it. Sometimes you can be so seared and jaded that you really are unable to love because you've been burned so many times in the past, or just because you shut yourself off, which is what usually is the case. People will get hurt, and then they'll just kind of like fold their arms and say, well, I'm never going to allow that to happen to me again. And then they shut themselves off. And then, of course, none of us sees the world the way it is. We see the world the way that we are. And so you start seeing that, love isn't real, and nobody's really compassionate, and everyone's just out for themselves, because that's what you're looking for. That's what you expect to find. So you'll find those examples, or worse yet, you'll superimpose those motivations on people, even when they're not there. This person's trying to show you that they love you, that they care. They're just trying to kiss my ass. This person admires you. No, they're just trying to kiss my ass. That's all. They want something out of me. It's not the case, man, all the time. Are there people out there like that? Yes, but that's not the world. And if it is your world, I would suggest to you need to find a new group of people, because that's not the world. There are all kinds of people out there, and there are snakes in the garden, of course, but there's also angels in there once in a while. So, what is hell? Maybe that's what it is. Being so isolated and alone that you can't share how you really feel. It's not having nobody around to talk to. It's from not having people around that you can talk to about how you really feel and how you really think, and with whom you can really be yourself. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Well, happy Wednesday.